Maybe next time she'll learn not to steal from family, my mother said, and 18 relatives standing around the Christmas tree in Tulsa went quiet. She said it while my car was sitting in an impound lot under a stolen vehicle flag my parents had put on it themselves. I was 24 years old. I had paid every cent on that 2017 Toyota Corolla, and because of what they reported, I had already lost 3 shifts at work and $486 in towing and storage fees. Then a woman I had never met walked into a room 3 weeks later and read one sentence out loud from a recorded call, and my father stopped pretending he did not understand what he had done. My name is Kelsey Warren. I'm 24 years old. Now let me take you back to South Tulsa, Christmas morning, December 25th, 2022. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love seeing where you're all listening from. The first thing I remember from that morning is the smell of cinnamon coffee cake and burnt sausage. My Aunt Dana had put on one of those instrumental Christmas playlists that sounds like it is being played through a hotel lobby speaker. My mother, Elaine Warren, had on a cream sweater with pearl buttons, and my father, Richard Warren, was carving ham in the kitchen as if he were hosting a campaign fundraiser instead of Christmas breakfast. My younger brother Nolan was there with his girlfriend, my cousin Marissa had driven in from Owasso, and my grandmother's church friend Loretta June was sitting in one of the wingback chairs by the fireplace because my mother invited her to everything now. 18 people total. I know because later I wrote every name down. At 9:14 that morning, my mother handed out small gifts. She gave my brother a Bass Pro gift card and his girlfriend a candle. Then she picked up a little red box with a ribbon on it and smiled at me in that careful, public way she used when she wanted witnesses. Inside was my spare car key, not a duplicate. My actual spare key, the one I had left in the top drawer of the hall table at their house 8 months earlier when I still believed I was safe there. She held the box out but did not let go. Maybe next time she'll learn not to steal from family. No one laughed. No one corrected her either. That part mattered more. I took the key from the box and said, "My car is registered to me." My father set the knife down on the cutting board and wiped his hands on a dish towel like he was getting ready to explain something reasonable to an unreasonable child. "We paid your down payment," he said. "You do not get to take what this family helped buy and then shut us out." I did not answer him. I had already learned by then that my parents were most dangerous when they sounded calm. 3 days before Christmas, on a Thursday afternoon at 11:27, I had been pulled over on East 71st Street near Sheridan while driving to my shift at Brookside Dental Associates. I was listening to a podcast, my coffee was in the cup holder. I was thinking about whether I had enough money left after rent to replace 2 tires before February. It was that ordinary. Then a Tulsa police cruiser turned its lights on behind me. I thought maybe I had rolled through a yellow. I pulled into the parking lot of a closed mattress store. The officer who came up to my window was younger than me, maybe 22, with pale eyelashes and a wedding ring that looked new. He asked for my license and registration, then asked me to step out of the vehicle. I remember the smell of cold asphalt and windshield washer fluid. I remember traffic hissing by on wet pavement because it had drizzled that morning. I remember him saying, "Ma'am, this vehicle is showing as stolen out of Wagoner County." I thought he had made a mistake, not the frightened kind, the administrative kind, the kind you solve in 5 minutes with a phone call. I said, "No, it's mine." He looked embarrassed for me, which was almost worse. "Who is the registered owner?" "I am," he asked if I could prove it. I pulled up my insurance app. I showed him the digital ID card with my name. I found a photo of the title application from when I bought the car in March of 2020. Then he stepped back to speak to dispatch, and I stood there in my dark green scrubs with my hair frizzing in the mist while people drove past and looked. 10 minutes later, another officer arrived, then a tow truck. That is how long it took them to erase me. The older officer, Dennis Merritt, had a voice like gravel and peppermint. He said very carefully, "The report says your parents claimed you took the vehicle without permission from their residence on South Fulton Avenue. It is entered stolen until that is cleared by the reporting party or by title verification through the agency. We have to tow it." I said, "They know it's mine." He gave me a look that told me this was not the first family fight he had seen turned into paperwork. I called my mother right there in the parking lot. She let it ring 4 times. Then she answered and said, I'm in the checkout line at Rayasor's. You reported my car stolen. It was taken without permission. It is titled in my name. Silence for 1 second. Then she said, your father and I contributed to that purchase. You have become very confused about what belongs to you. I hung up. I did not scream. I did not cry in front of them. Instead, I asked Officer Merritt for the report number and wrote it down on the back of a CVS receipt I found in my purse. Case number WTSO 229147. The tow fee was $237, storage was $49 a day. By the time I got the car released, after proving ownership to the impound office on North Mingo Road, it cost me $486.50. I missed the Thursday afternoon shift all day Friday and the half day on Monday because my office manager, Rebecca Sloan, did not want me driving under an active stolen vehicle issue. She was kind about it, but kind still counts as lost wages. I made $21.50 an hour back then. With the missed holiday pay and the whitening bonus we got for year-end cosmetic cases, I lost just over $500 that week. My checking account on December 26th had $112 in it. If you have ever had that moment where you know everything is about to change, and you still have to keep your voice level because the person across from you is counting on you to crack first, then you know exactly what that parking lot felt like. What happened next was worse because my parents did not stop at the police report. They started building a story. And they tried to make me live inside it. If this story feels familiar already, subscribe now. Because the person who finally broke it open was not family and was not on my side until the paperwork forced her to be. Now let me take you back to March 10th, 2020 at Riverside Toyota on South Memorial Drive. I bought that Corolla when I was 21. It had 42,000 miles on it, silver paint, one tiny scratch by the rear passenger handle, and that weird clean smell dealerships use that sits halfway between citrus and plastic. The sale price was $14,600. I put down $3,000 from my own savings and financed the rest through TTCU Federal Credit Union. My parents did give me a check that day, $1,000. They made a show of it in the finance office. My father said a father should help his daughter start right. The finance manager, a woman named Teresa Molina, stapled the copy of that check into my folder because it was part of the down payment trail. I remember that because Teresa asked me twice, "You're the only titled owner, correct?" And I said yes twice. My mother sat with her legs crossed and smiled. Of course. There was no misunderstanding, no joint ownership, no cosign, no family car arrangement. My credit score was 718 and just good enough. The Corolla was mine. For a year after that, things with my parents were manageable in the way some bad family situations are manageable if you're young and still trying to earn your way out. I visited on Sundays, brought pies at Thanksgiving, answered texts quickly, and accepted that every nice thing came with a hook in it. Then in April of 2022, I moved from their side of town to a one-bedroom apartment near Cherry Street, $875 a month, old windows pipes that knocked in the walls at night, and a giant sycamore outside the bedroom window that dropped bark into the parking lot after storms. It was the first place that felt fully mine. My parents hated it immediately. Not the apartment, the distance. They had been using me without calling it that for years. I drove my grandmother to appointments. I picked up Nolan when his truck was in the shop. I helped my father with bookkeeping for his heating and air business, because he still printed invoices on those three-part carbon forms like it was 1994. Once I moved, I started saying no. I stopped keeping a toothbrush in their guest bath. I stopped dropping by unannounced. I stopped answering calls during work. That summer, my mother began asking for my spare key. She framed it like safety. "In case you lock yourself out?" I said no. She asked 3 more times anyway. In August, while I was helping carry in food for my cousin's engagement barbecue, she went into my purse and took it without asking. I only found out because Nolan, of all people, texted me that night at 10:43. "Mom took your extra Corolla key out of your makeup bag. Just thought you should know." I still have that text. Screenshotted with the battery percentage visible. 82%. I drove over the next morning and asked for it back. My mother handed it to me from the hall table drawer and said, "Do not be dramatic. I wanted to have one made." I should have changed the lock sequence then. I should have had the key reprogrammed, I know that now. But at 23, when the people hurting you are your parents, you still spend a lot of energy trying to remain legible to them. You think if you explain it correctly, they will stop. They do not stop. They collect information. By November, things were openly tense. I told them I would not be spending every holiday morning at their house anymore, because I had plans with friends in the afternoon and I was tired of driving all over Tulsa to make everyone comfortable except me. My father called me selfish. My mother said, "That apartment has given you delusions." 2 weeks before Christmas, on Sunday, December 11th, I stopped by to pick up a casserole dish I had left there after Thanksgiving. My father asked if I would let Nolan borrow my Corolla for a weekend because his transmission was slipping. I said no. My insurance did not cover him regularly, and he had already gotten 2 speeding tickets that year. My father leaned back in his recliner and said, "Everything with you has become a transaction." I said no. It just has boundaries now. My mother looked at me over the rim of her coffee mug and said, "You speak to us like strangers." I left with the casserole dish and a sick feeling in my throat that tasted like metal. On Tuesday, December 20th, my father called twice while I was at work. Then he texted at 1:16 in the afternoon. "Need the Corolla this weekend. Family emergency. Call me." I did not call. I texted back at 1:23. "No, hope everything is okay." At 7:41 that night, he sent one line. "You are making a very serious mistake." That phrase sat in my phone like a warning flare. I screenshotted it and put it in a folder in my notes app titled December. Then I forgot about it for 24 hours, because that is what life does. It keeps handing you ordinary tasks while the trap is already in motion. The report was made on Wednesday, December 21st at 6:52 p.m. I did not know that until later. What I knew first was the traffic stop, then the impound, then the phone call, then Christmas. After my mother made her little speech over the red gift box on Christmas morning, my Aunt Dana put her fork down and said, too brightly, "Well, who wants coffee?" That was her specialty, not intervention. Diversion. My cousin Marissa would not look at me. Loretta June stared into her lap. Nolan stood by the sliding glass door with the fixed expression of a person trying to become wallpaper. He had known something. I could feel it. I set the spare key on the mantel and said, "You reported a car stolen that is titled and financed in my name. I have the paperwork." My father folded the dish towel into a square. "Kelsey, stop performing. I was pulled over because of you. You were inconvenienced because of your own choices." That was the room they wanted me trapped in. One where facts become manners, one where the person harmed is accused of making it unpleasant. So I did the only thing that still worked with them. I documented. I left at 9:26. I sat in my car outside their house on South Fulton, with the windshield fogging and the smell of pine from the cheap air freshener clipped to the vent, and I typed every sentence I could remember into my phone. Exact wording, who was in the room, what time I arrived. What color box my mother used for the key. My hands were shaking so hard I misspelled my own aunt's name twice. Then I drove home and started a real folder. December 2022. Then subfolders: purchase, insurance, key, report, tow, work, family witnesses. I printed the bill from the impound lot. I downloaded my bank statements showing every car payment to TTCU. I found the insurance declarations page with my name as sole insured and sole owner. I pulled the original purchase contract from the accordion file I kept in the linen closet because the closet was dry and my apartment kitchen drawers stuck when the weather changed. I also texted Nolan, "Did you know they reported it stolen?" He did not answer for 46 minutes. Then he sent back, "I knew Dad was talking about calling it in. I did not think he actually would." That sentence was the first crack I asked. "When did he say that?" He wrote, "Tuesday night, in the garage. Mom said maybe it would teach you humility." I read that 3 times. Then I screenshotted it. Then I sent it to my Gmail and printed it at the FedEx office on Peoria because I wanted a paper copy in case anything got deleted. I had been keeping that folder for 11 months by the time this ended. But that night was when it became a case, even if I did not call it that yet. On Monday, December 26th, I went to work in black scrubs because our office allowed dark colors after Christmas. The sterilizer room smelled like bleach and hot metal. Rebecca, my office manager, pulled me into her office before my first patient and shut the door. "Your mother called here Saturday." I sat down slowly. "What did she say?" Rebecca looked uncomfortable in the way decent people do when they are forced to repeat something ugly. She said there may be an investigation involving your vehicle and that she wanted us aware in case law enforcement came by. I actually laughed, just once. A flat sound. Rebecca reached into a manila folder and handed me a sticky note with the date and time. Saturday, December 24th, 10:15 a.m. She had written down the number my mother called from. You know I do not care about family drama, she said. But if someone calls my office and says one of my employees may have stolen a vehicle, I make a note. I asked if she would email me exactly what she remembered. She did it while I sat there. Subject line: call from Elaine Warren regarding Kelsey Warren. Timestamp: 8:57 a.m. because she had typed it before opening. That detail mattered too. I did not tell Rebecca everything. I did not need to. She believed me the second she saw how organized I was. That afternoon, on my lunch break, I called Wagoner County Sheriff's Office and asked how to get a copy of the stolen vehicle report involving my VIN. The receptionist transferred me twice. A records clerk named Sandra Pike told me I would need to request it and that portions could be withheld while the report was active, I said. I need the narrative and call time, she said. You can request what is releasable. So I drove there on Wednesday, December 28th after work. If you have ever had to walk into a county building carrying proof of your own life in a plastic folder just to convince strangers that you're real, you know how humiliating and clarifying it is at the same time. The truth starts feeling less emotional and more mechanical. Signature, timestamp, VIN number. It was about to get even more mechanical because the first outsider who helped me did not mean to help me at all. The Wagoner County Sheriff's Office records window was behind thick glass that made everyone sound farther away than they were. The lobby smelled like floor wax and old coffee. Sandra Pike had short silver hair and those beaded reading glasses that hang on a chain against your chest. She took my request form, asked for my driver's license, then frowned at her screen. You are the vehicle owner. Yes. And the reporting parties are Richard and Elaine Warren?
Yes.
She looked up over the glasses, and for 1 second her face changed from clerk neutral to woman who has seen enough. Then it closed again. What I can give you today is the incident summary page and property sheet. The call audio is a separate request through dispatch. I paid $6.50 for the copies. In the parking lot, sitting in my Corolla with the heater blasting dust-smelling air into my face. I opened the packet and saw it in black ink. Reported stolen by owner parents. That phrase was typed under notes, even though the title section listed me as registered owner after verification. I read the narrative summary twice. My father had told dispatch that I had taken the vehicle from the family residence without permission after repeated demands to return it. My mother had added that I was emotionally unstable and may attempt to hide or damage the property. There it was, not just theft. Character assassination built into a report. I called my friend Priya Menon from the car. Priya and I had gone to high school together, and by 24 she was in her second year at the University of Tulsa College of Law. I trusted her because she never dramatized anything. She said, do not call them, do not warn them. Save every voicemail. Get the dispatch audio if you can, and pull title history from the tag agency if your state allows a request. I said, can they do this and just walk away? She said, people can say almost anything if the system is not set up to question them in real time. The issue is whether the record later shows they knew it was false. That was the sentence that changed my posture, not whether they were cruel, whether the record showed knowledge, so I went after knowledge. On Thursday, December 29th at 12:10 in the afternoon, I drove to South Tag Agency on East 31st Street. The waiting area had fluorescent lights that made everybody look tired. A toddler was crying near the brochure rack. The clerk who called me up wore a green fleece with her name stitched on it. Rita Lawson. I asked for title and registration history tied to my VIN and if there had been any requests or attempted changes involving other names. She said, you would need to complete a vehicle records request. I did $20. She disappeared for 11 minutes, then came back with a printout and a look I recognized by then, slightly sharpened, interested against her better judgment. Your title has always been sole ownership under Kelsey Warren, she said. There was an inquiry on December 22nd by an Elaine Warren asking what would be required to add a family member to title. No change was made. I asked her to repeat the date. She did, December 22nd, one day after the false stolen report. That mattered because it meant my mother had already used the report, then tried to gather information on how to claw ownership back after the fact. It was not confusion. It was sequence. I asked if I could get that in writing. She printed the transaction inquiry log with her initials at the bottom. I went back to my car and just sat there with the engine off. The steering wheel was cold under my hands. In the parking lot, somebody was playing bass so loud from a Dodge Charger 2 rows over that I could feel the vibration in my seat. I remember thinking very clearly they are not going to be able to talk their way out of dates. That night, my mother left me a voicemail at 8:04. Kelsey, your father and I are very concerned about your behavior. You are involving outside people now, and that is not wise. Return the key and stop escalating this. Return the key. The key she had put in a Christmas box after reporting my car stolen. I saved the voicemail as an audio file and typed out a transcript. On Friday, December 30th, the dispatch audio request went through. I did not get the recording immediately, but I got confirmation that it existed and would be available once the supervisor approved release. That same afternoon, Nolan showed up at my apartment unannounced. He had on a gray Carhartt jacket and smelled like diesel and winter air. He stood awkwardly just inside the door, looking at my half-decorated fake tree and the stack of file folders on my coffee table. "I should have told you sooner," he said. I pointed to the chair by the window. "Then tell me now." He sat and pressed his palms together. "Dad was mad because you would not let me borrow the car. Tuesday night, he said, if you wanted to act like a stranger, he could treat you like one. Mom said there was a way to make sure you stopped getting ideas. She said because they helped pay for it, the sheriff would sort it out. Did you hear the actual call?" "No, but I heard Mom tell him to mention your apartment and say you had been unstable since moving. That word again. Unstable." I said, "Why did you not stop them?" He swallowed. "Because when they are focused on you, they are not focused on me." There it was, the whole architecture in one sentence. I did not comfort him. I did not attack him either. I asked him if he would put what he heard in writing. He stared at me for a long second and then nodded. He wrote it at my kitchen counter on a legal pad from Quick Trip. Date, time, what he heard. His signature, messy and slanted. I took a photo of it before he left. If you have ever had someone finally tell the truth after letting you drown in silence first, then you know it is not relief exactly. Not the warm kind, the useful kind, the kind you can file. I was close now, but the piece that ended everything had not arrived yet. It came from a woman in dispatch who had never met me and did not care about my family at all. The call audio arrived on Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023 at 2:17 in the afternoon. I know the exact time because I was in the break room at work eating yogurt that had gone warm while I waited for a patient no-show to clear. My phone buzzed with an email from Wagoner County Communications. Audio request fulfilled. Download link below. My hands went cold. I took my lunch to my car because I did not want anybody around when I listened. The Corolla still smelled faintly like the pine air freshener and the French fries I had eaten in it the week before. I sat in the driver's seat with the doors locked and hit play. The dispatcher identified the date and time. Wednesday, December 21st, 6:52 p.m. Then my father's voice came on, calm, measured, almost bored. He gave my plate number and the VIN, which meant they had either copied it down before or looked at old paperwork they still had. He said their daughter had taken the vehicle from their residence without permission and refused to bring it back. The dispatcher asked, "Is the vehicle titled to you, sir?" My father paused for maybe half a second. Then he said, "It is a family vehicle. We paid for it." The dispatcher asked again, "Whose name is on the title?" And then my mother cut in from somewhere near the phone. Her voice was clearer than his. "It does not matter. We are the parents. She does not have permission." I stopped the audio and stared through the windshield at nothing. Then I played it again and again. The dispatcher had asked the one clean question in the whole mess. Whose name is on the title? And instead of saying they did not know or that they thought they were on it, my mother said it did not matter. That was knowledge. I forwarded the audio to Priya and to a new Gmail folder I had created called Warren Vehicle. Priya called me within 7 minutes. "That line is your hinge," she said, because they were directly asked ownership, and she sidestepped it. "Also get the dealership finance person if you can. Anybody who can say your parents knew at signing." So after work, I drove to Riverside Toyota and asked if Teresa Molina still worked there. She did. She had the same sharp eyeliner and the same no-nonsense posture as 3 years earlier. Her office still smelled like toner and vanilla hand lotion, I explained, as simply as I could, that my parents had falsely reported my car stolen and I needed a copy of the purchase and finance file and confirmation of who was present and who signed. She pulled my file by stock number, actual paper thick and stapled. "You were the buyer," she said. "You were the only title applicant, no co-buyer. Your father provided one check toward the down payment. That is all. Do you remember them being told that?" She gave me a look. "Ms. Warren, I tell every customer exactly who is buying the car because mistakes become lawsuits." "Yes, I asked twice. I know the channel asked for plain language, and this is exactly how real people say it when they are trying not to say more than they should." I asked if she would print the buyer order, retail installment contract, title application copy, and receipt breakdown. She did. Then, because she was apparently the kind of woman who does not like being used in lies, she also wrote a short note on dealership letterhead. Buyer listed as Kelsey Warren only. No joint ownership discussed or processed. Parents present during execution of sale documents. Signed. Teresa Molina, Finance Manager, January 3, 2023. I almost cried then, not because it was emotional, because it was clean. That night, my mother texted me at 9:31. "This has gone far enough. We expect an apology before Sunday." I typed nothing. I took a screenshot. The next escalation came from church. My parents went to a mid-sized Baptist church in Broken Arrow, where my mother had taught vacation Bible school for 13 years, and my father handled facilities during men's prayer breakfasts. Reputation was oxygen there. On Sunday, January 8th, I did not go. I stayed home, cleaned my bathroom, and tried to pretend my life was not now measured in records requests. At 12:46 p.m., Loretta June called. Loretta was not actually related to us. She was one of those church women who knew everybody's birthdays and who had once brought us a 7-layer salad after my wisdom teeth came out. "She never called me directly," I answered. "Kelsey," she said quietly, "your mother told people this morning that you're struggling and made a false claim about the vehicle because of stress." I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at my laundry basket. She said I made the claim. She said there is confusion and that your father may need to be protected from accusations. The word protected landed like grease. I asked, "Who heard that?" "A circle of ladies and 2 deacons' wives. I am not calling for gossip. I am calling because it was wrong." Silence sat between us for 2 beats, then she added, "I was also at Christmas. I heard exactly what she said with that key. There are people who stay silent because they are weak, and there are people who stay silent because they need one private reason to choose a side." Loretta had found hers. I asked if she would write down what she heard on Christmas morning and what my mother said at church. She said yes. She dropped the note in my mailbox that evening in an envelope from Mardel. Blue ink, 2 dated paragraphs, her phone number at the bottom. I added it to the folder. "Now let me take you back to Tuesday, January 10th, 6:30 in the evening, to my parents' kitchen on South Fulton." I went there because my father had left me 2 voicemails and 1 message through Nolan that said, "Come discuss this like an adult." I took Priya's advice and did not go alone. My friend Jenna Ruiz came with me and waited in the car outside. Jenna worked in HR for a hotel chain and believed in witness notes like some people believe in prayer. The kitchen smelled like lemon cleaner and overripe bananas. My mother had set out coasters. That should tell you everything. They expected civility to do their work for them. My father sat at the table with a yellow legal pad. My mother had a folder of her own. For one naive second, I wondered if they had finally gathered themselves to tell the truth. They had not. My mother opened with, "This can still be handled privately," I said. "Then fix the report and pay me back." She folded her hands. "We are prepared to reimburse your impound inconvenience if you stop telling people we lied." My father slid a handwritten sheet toward me. It listed $486.50 for tow and storage, nothing for lost wages, nothing for my manager being contacted, nothing for the stolen flag on my VIN. At the bottom was one sentence: "Receipt of payment acknowledges family misunderstanding and ends the matter." I looked at it, then at him. "This says misunderstanding," he said. "That is what this is." I took out my phone and photographed the paper. My mother spoke more sharply then. Do not be insolent in my home. I said, you asked dispatch to list a car as stolen when you knew it was in my name. My father's jaw shifted once. Do not use that tone with me. I put the printout from Rita Lawson on the table. Mom asked the tag agency how to add herself to the title the day after the report. My mother did not touch the paper. I put down Teresa Molina's letter. The dealership confirmed you were told at purchase I was sole owner. Still, she said nothing. Then I said, and I have the dispatch audio. That was the first time either of them went fully still, not angry still, calculating still. My mother recovered first. You are recording public servants in a private family dispute. That says a great deal about you. I said no. It says a great deal about you. My father reached for the papers, but I took them back first. Then he said the line I will probably remember when I'm 80. If you continue with this, do not expect to remain part of this family. I stood up. I did not sign. I did not negotiate. Instead, I took one photo of the handwritten sheet, texted Jenna to note the time, and walked out. In the car, Jenna looked at my face and asked, did they offer hush money? I said $486.50. She whistled once. That is such a specific level of evil. That night, Priya connected me with someone she knew from a clinic internship, a young attorney named Adam Heller who focused on insurance and liability messes. I met him for coffee the next morning at Topeka on South Boston. The place smelled like espresso and toasted sugar. I brought the entire folder in a canvas tote bag. Adam read quietly for 20 minutes, then said, you may not need to drag this into a courtroom if they are stupid enough to keep talking in front of institutions. Plain enough for me, he suggested two practical things. First, send a written demand for reimbursement of the direct costs and correction of the false ownership claim through certified mail, because people behave differently when a green card comes back signed. Second, notify my insurance company and employer in writing that a false stolen report had been made and later contradicted by title records, so if my parents escalated again, there would already be a paper trail. That was exactly what I did. On Thursday, January 12th, I mailed a 2-page letter by certified mail to my parents. Not legal language, plain language. You falsely reported my vehicle stolen on December 21st, 2022. The car is solely titled and insured in my name. Your report caused towing and storage fees of $486.50, plus lost wages of $512.88. You also contacted my workplace. I'm demanding reimbursement within 10 business days and written confirmation that you have corrected the false claim with the reporting agency. I attached copies, not all of them. Enough. I sent another copy to myself. My insurance agent, Melissa Crow at State Farm, called me the next morning after getting my email. She said, you may want to know your mother called on December 22nd asking whether she could make a claim involving unauthorized use by a family member. I closed my eyes. Did she identify herself? Yes. We did not discuss policy details because she is not the insured. I asked if she could email me that. She could not give me policy internals, but she could confirm that a non-insured individual had called asking about a vehicle not listed under her name. She sent a short note on agency letterhead, another date, another failed angle. If you've ever watched someone keep reaching for a lever that does not belong to them just because they are used to doors opening, you know the feeling. It stops being personal for a second and turns almost architectural. They had used the police, they had called my job. They had tried the tag agency, they had tried my insurer. What they had not accounted for was a trail of women who took notes, and one of them was about to read those notes out loud. The 10 business days on my letter expired on Thursday, January 26th. On Friday, January 27th at 8:12 a.m., I got an email from a lawyer. Subject line, Warren Family Matter. His name was Craig Dobbins, Midtown office, crisp signature block. He wrote that he represented Richard and Elaine Warren and that any further defamatory allegations should cease immediately. He also wrote that my parents maintained they had acted under a good faith belief of ownership interest due to substantial financial contribution. I laughed in my apartment kitchen so hard I startled myself. Good faith belief. They had paid $1,000. I had made 34 monthly payments, and my mother had told dispatch title did not matter. I forwarded the email to Adam and Priya. Adam called first. This is useful. They are writing down their position now. Also, if they want to keep calling it ownership, they are inviting a room where records get compared. He told me not to answer directly. Instead, he suggested I gather one final piece that linked all the dates in one place. A certified title record and, if possible, the corrected police notation once ownership had been verified. So on Monday, January 30th, I requested a certified ownership record through the Oklahoma Tax Commission Records Unit. It arrived by mail 6 days later with a raised seal. Sole owner, Kelsey Marie Warren. Effective March 10, 2020. No transfers, no changes. Meanwhile, Wagoner County quietly updated the stolen vehicle file after my proof of ownership had been processed and reviewed. I know because Officer Merritt called me on Wednesday, February 1st at 4:36 p.m. His voice was the same gravel and peppermint from the traffic stop. Ms. Warren, I wanted to let you know the vehicle has been cleared and the supplemental notes reflect ownership verification. I asked, do the notes say they were informed? They say title was confirmed to registered owner and reporting parties were advised. I wrote that down word for word in my notebook. Then I asked for a copy of the supplemental page. He said, request it through records, mention my name. The supplemental page came 2 days later. There was one line on it that mattered more than all the rest. Reporting parties advised vehicle titled to Kelsey Warren. Complaint not supported as theft. That should have ended it, but people like my parents rarely stop when the truth arrives. They start trying to control the room it arrives in. My mother texted me on Saturday, February 4th, do not embarrass this family in front of church. There it was, her real fear. Not that she had done it, that it might be named. The chance came sooner than I expected because my grandmother's 70th birthday lunch was scheduled for Sunday, February 12th at a private room in a restaurant called Stone Mill Kitchen on South Lewis. 41 people were invited, family, church friends, 2 old neighbors, and my grandmother's card club. My mother was effectively hosting because she handled all social logistics and because no one in our family could imagine an event without her at the center. I almost did not go. Then Loretta called again on Thursday evening. Honey, she said, your mother has been telling people you are making accusations for money. If I were you, I would attend. So I went. I wore a black sweater, small gold hoops, and the kind of makeup you can cry in if you need to, though I had no intention of crying. I brought one slim folder in my tote bag. Not the whole archive, just enough. Jenna came in separately and sat at the far end with my cousin Marissa, who had finally started answering my texts after 6 weeks of strategic silence. The private room smelled like yeast rolls and roasted chicken. Glassware clinked. My grandmother wore a lavender cardigan and kept touching the little pearl brooch pinned at her shoulder because she was happy and nervous and 70. My parents moved through the room greeting people as if nothing had happened. My father looked almost cheerful. Then after the entrees, while the server was pouring tea, my mother stood up with her hand on the back of her chair and said, before dessert, I would just like to thank everyone who has supported our family through a difficult season, especially while dealing with false and hurtful allegations. She did not look at me directly when she said it. She looked at the room. That was her gift. Spread the accusation wide enough and nobody knows where to stand. My grandmother frowned. My Aunt Dana stared into her tea. 15 faces turned toward me. Then 20 more. I did not speak. I reached into my bag and texted one person, Sandra Pike, because 3 days earlier, after enough records requests and patient politeness, I had asked if there was any chance someone from records could send over the supplemental ownership page before the lunch. Sandra had said she could not email restricted materials to a restaurant, which was fair, but she could meet me there beforehand if I paid for the certified copy. I had paid, at 2:11 p.m., as my mother was still standing there in her navy dress, pretending to be dignified. The side door of the private room opened, and Sandra Pike stepped in wearing a county badge, clipped to her cardigan and holding a large sealed envelope. For 1 second, nobody understood who she was. Then she looked around and said, Kelsey Warren? I stood. She walked over and handed me the envelope. Certified copy of the supplemental report and ownership verification you requested. I need your signature of receipt. My mother's mouth actually parted. I signed on Sandra's clipboard. She was already turning to leave when my grandmother, of all people, said, Is that about the car? Sandra stopped because older women asking direct questions have a force all their own. She said, in the flat, neutral tone of somebody reading weather, It is the ownership verification and supplemental note reflecting that the vehicle reported stolen on December 21st was titled to Kelsey Warren and that the complaint was not supported as theft. The room went silent. Not polite silent, structural silent. Then my mother said one broken sentence. That is not what we were told. Sandra did not even look at her. She adjusted the envelope in my hand and said, "Ma'am, this copy reflects the file." Then she walked out. I could have stopped there. I should have been able to stop there. But my mother had already spent 7 weeks telling a different story in every room that mattered to her. So I opened the envelope. Inside was the supplemental page with the sheriff's notation and the certified ownership record with the raised seal. I handed the title record first to my grandmother because she was closest and because she had spent most of my life watching my mother decide what version of me entered a room. Grandma adjusted her glasses and read. Her lips moved silently over my full name. Then she looked up at my father and said, "Richard, why would you say she stole her own car?" No one answered. Loretta June spoke next, softly but clearly. Because that is not what they wanted people to believe. And then, like a chain finding its next link, Marissa pulled out her phone and said, "Aunt Elaine told me on Christmas that Kelsey was under investigation." Rebecca was not there, of course, but I had already given a copy of her email note to my Aunt Dana the week before in case my parents tried to call me a liar again. Dana looked at me across the table, saw the question in my face, and nodded once. Then she said, "Elaine also called Kelsey's workplace." That was the moment the room shifted. Not back to me, away from them. My father tried to pick up his water glass and his hand knocked the spoon against it hard enough to ring. My mother sat down slowly. I took one paper from my folder and put it on the table in front of my grandmother. Teresa Molina's note, then another Rita Lawson's title inquiry log, then the typed transcript of my mother's voicemail saying, "Return the key and stop escalating this." Then Nolan, who had spent most of lunch staring at the salt shaker, finally said without looking up, "I heard them talking about calling it in before they did. There are silences that feel like absence. This was not that kind. This was a room recalculating. If you've ever waited weeks to be believed and then watched belief arrive all at once, it does not feel triumphant immediately. It feels quiet, heavy, almost clinical. Because by then you already know every ugly detail. What stunned me was not that the truth landed, it was who finally chose not to protect them from it. My grandmother folded the supplemental report back into its envelope with shaking fingers. Then she said, "Kelsey, did they cost you money?" I said, "$999.38, including lost wages." My father finally spoke. "This is becoming absurd." My grandmother turned to him with a face I had not seen since I was 12 and had lied about sneaking out to a movie. "No, Richard. Reporting a titled car stolen because your daughter said no is absurd." He did not answer. My mother tried one more time. We acted on advice. From where? From whom? She did not say. And that was when the final outsider entered the story. Not physically, but through my phone. I had sent the dispatch audio to myself and saved one clipped section. The title question, the answer. I looked at my grandmother and asked, "Do you want to hear the call?" She said yes. So I placed my phone on the white tablecloth and played exactly 14 seconds. "Dispatcher, whose name is on the title?" "My mother. It does not matter. We are the parents. She does not have permission." Nobody moved. The server stood in the doorway holding a tray of bread pudding and then quietly backed out. My mother's face lost all expression. My father looked at the table and said, "Just once, turn that off." I did. That was enough. The price came in pieces. The first was money. On Tuesday, February 14th, 2 days after the birthday lunch, Craig Dobbins emailed Adam and me a settlement offer. Again, plain language once you stripped his polish away. My parents would reimburse the direct losses if I agreed not to discuss the matter further in public. This time, the number included everything I had documented: $486.50 for tow and storage, $512.88 for lost wages, $68 for record fees, certified mail and mileage, total $1,067.38. I agreed to reimbursement. I did not agree to silence. Adam sent back one sentence: "Kelsey will accept payment, but she will not agree to any statement describing the incident as a misunderstanding." A cashier's check arrived on Friday, February 17th. The second price was church. My mother had built a lot of her identity around being reliable, tasteful, and impossible to embarrass. After the lunch that cracked fast, Loretta told me later that by the next Wednesday women's Bible study, at least 6 people had heard some version of what happened. Not because I spread it, because the room at Stone Mill Kitchen had done that work for me. My mother was quietly asked to step down from coordinating the spring women's luncheon for a season. Those were the exact words. Church language for removal without admitting scandal. She had run that event for 8 years. My father lost the facility's volunteer key card after one of the deacons, whose wife had been at the birthday lunch, said they needed better judgment around liability. He was furious about that one, not because of service, because he liked access. The third price was official, and it was the one that mattered most to me. On Monday, March 6th, Officer Merritt called again. He said the file had been reviewed due to my ownership documentation, the dispatch audio and the supplemental records, and a notation had been added that the original complaint was false and unsupported. He did not tell me there would be charges. There were not. But he did tell me that any future report involving my vehicle from those reporting parties would be flagged against the prior false complaint. That is the kind of consequence people underestimate. Not dramatic, structural. My parents lost credibility with the system they tried to use against me. My insurance company also placed a note on my account after Melissa's documentation, so any inquiry from them about my Corolla would be refused and logged. I changed all keys, had the spare reprogrammed, and paid $294 for a new remote set and immobilizer reset at the dealership. My parents did not get that key. They never would. There was one more piece, and it came from Nolan. He moved out in April. He did not move in with me. We were not suddenly close. Damage does not evaporate because one person finally tells the truth. But he signed a lease with a friend in Jenks and told me over coffee at Chimera that he was done living inside our parents' weather. He also repaid me $200 he still owed from a concert ticket and one emergency tire I had covered for him in 2021. It was not much. It was honest. As for my parents, they tried 3 times over the next year to reopen contact on terms that protected them. Birthday cards with no apology. A Thanksgiving text from my father that said, "We should all move forward." A voicemail from my mother in December saying, "I hope you're ready to stop punishing us." I kept every one. I answered once in January of 2024. I wrote, "I am not punishing you. I am remembering accurately." That was the last thing I said to her. People ask if I ever forgave them. I do not know if forgive is the right word for what happens when your own parents decide institutions will believe them more easily than they will believe a document with your name on it. I know I stopped negotiating with the version of them I wanted. I know I stopped bringing pies and pretending the hook was not there. I know that when I bought my next car, a 2023 Honda Civic in May of 2024, I did not tell them. I signed a loan. I drove it home to my apartment in Midtown, now a different one with better windows, and parked under a security camera I had paid to install myself. Sometimes I still think about the Christmas box, the little red one with the ribbon, how carefully she had prepared it, how certain she was that humiliation would hold if she staged it beautifully enough. It did not. The truth was uglier than her performance, but it was also simpler. They reported my car stolen because I told them no. They called my job because they thought fear would make me smaller. They reached for the police, the tag office, the insurance company, and the church, because those rooms had always bent toward them before. This time they met women with printers. That does not heal everything. It does not give me a different mother. It does not make Christmas feel neutral again. There are still songs I skip in December because they drop me straight back into that living room with the burnt sausage and the instrumental carols and my mother holding out my own key like a trophy. But when I think about how it ended, what I remember most is not my mother going quiet. It is Sandra Pike from County Records standing in a private dining room with her badge on her cardigan, reading one plain sentence in the same voice she probably used all day for property sheets and accident reports. Complaint not supported as theft. That was all.